$10 million. Ohio State is crowing about the money they can spend. I don't know if you have a release on that you want to pull up, but they're the ones self-promoting it. $10 million just on incoming players, not to keep the Cooper Mazes of the world. That's what Ohio State is spending. Is that
no? That's what they've already spent. That's what they've already spent, which is even crazier.
They could spend more before the second signing day.
Yes. This is what a source told 10 TV in WBNS News was able to get a hold of this. And basically they have been loading up on talent. And this is where you have to think, look at who Ohio State has been adding. They added the Alabama transfer quarterback, Julian Sand, who was a number 3 quarterback in the nation. And so they got him. They have, he joins with Kansas State transfer quarterback Will Howard. 2 quarterbacks that expect to start next year both agreed to go to Ohio State, which is crazy on its own. And then on top of that, safety Caleb Downs, who we know was probably the best defensive player in the open market this year. That wasn't going to be a headache like Walter Nolan. And then center Seth McLaughlin, who did play horrible in the Rose Bowl, let's be honest. But at the same time, Seth McLaughlin does have a lot of raw potential, and he just wasn't ready for that moment. So, yeah, they have been but there were a couple of players where they did spend some money was to get players that, Dave, I'll just tell you, they spent a bit of it on player retention, but not player retention like Tennessee. For instance, Tennessee spent money to keep, we believe, Cooper Mays back, right? But
Cooper probably a little bit. Keenan, although Keenan didn't have as much leverage. John Campbell Jr., not as much leverage. But I think everybody that we've talked about that have returned that could have gone got a little chunk. Cooper's the lead dog in that.
Right. But all of them also have a chance to improve their draft stock this year, too, at the same time. It's not like we're talking top 5 draft pick that they threw away. Like, it's not like John Henderson in 2000, who literally left millions on the table to come back to Tennessee in 2001. And the same with Peyton Manning in 96 to 97. Well, Ohio State got that with Travion Henderson. He'd have been the top running back in the draft this upcoming year. And he chose to come back to Ohio State, which was the weirdest thing. Plus, they added a 1,000-yard rusher, Quinshon Judkins from Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin. So we're talking, they're loading up on talent, players competing at the same position, and they're spending a ton of NIL cash to do it. I'm pretty sure they're basically telling Ryan Day, you're out of excuses. If you don't win a national championship this year, we're firing you. That's what they're trying. That's what they're trying to do.
Wow. Derek saying TMZ currently surfacing dirt on OSU. If that's the case, put a link in there, Derek. I think you're joking, but I'm not sure. That's nothing would surprise me now. TMZ is all about the clicks. Who cares about having any integrity whatsoever? But they've broken into an area where they do break some stuff. Hit that like and subscribe button. Smash the like button if you haven't done that to this point. So Caleb thinks Tennessee can absolutely compete. That brings us to 4 downs, NIL style. Derek said he's joking. I was excited.
4 Downs brought to you by Dynasty Spas, the most comfortable spas made in the United States of America, right here in East Tennessee. Drop in for the all-new showroom in Athens. Dynasty Spas, perfect for all 4 seasons. 4 Downs, presented by Off the Hook Sports.
Yeah, I mentioned Off the Hook Sports, and you get $500 off of your spa, and it comes with everything they can deliver in Knoxville. Go to that Athens showroom, support our sponsors. That's why we're here. So, Coop, what do? We're going to jump in the hot tub.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All righty. Let's go. What down?
Coop here. First down.
All right. So, what do you make of Ohio State self-promoting this number? Tennessee's done some self-promotion of NIL, but I got to be honest with you. I don't think it's the best business practice. Because if I say that Off the Hook Sports just made $10 million last year, then Caleb Calhoun and Caleb Giroux are going to come say, where's my raise? And I wouldn't blame them for doing it. I think it's a little silly, and you put yourself in a position where a kid says, you spent $10 million last year. I'm a quarterback. Spend a lot of money on me. I think it's stupid. And I think most Ohio State fans are kind of off.
I think most of the time I agree with you, but sometimes I think this is done for pressure. I think Tennessee did this to let people know they have the number one NIL collective. And right after they did that, remember, Danny White started his fundraising goal of $500 million. Danny White's point in all this was to the fan base, guys, I need some money from y'all if y'all want to keep having this collective at number one to get Nico. That it's connected. He basically is trying to make the point, we don't get Nico. Danny White is saying to everybody, Tennessee, we don't get Nico, guys, without the NIL collective. And the NIL collective is only possible if y'all help us reach this fundraising goal. That's basically what happens. Now, Ohio State, you do know, here's something to think about, Dave. They just hired Ross Bjork, the former athletic director at Texas A&M.
Yes, and I love Bjork when he was a singer as well. Go ahead.
Okay. So they hired Ross Bjork, who was responsible for the firing of Jimbo Fisher and responsible for the 12th Man initiative that got in trouble with NIL last year. So Bjork is a big NIL guy. I think part of this is a method by Bjork to literally make it publicly known. A new athletic director, NIL coming up. He wants to make it clear. He wants to set the stage right now to make it smooth when he decides to fire Ryan Day next year. Because I think he wants Ryan Day gone.
Yeah, I think they're all in. This is like the same thing as they hired Bill O'Brien, offensive coordinator. I think you may have mentioned that, right? So They bring him in. He's an offensive coach. I think it's basically give you everything to see if you can make it. And if you screw it up, bye-bye. You're gonzo. Yeah. I think that's exactly what it is. And don't be surprised with Ohio State if there's another Lincoln Riley type move. Like a guy goes from a big school to another big school. Now, I don't know who that opens it up, but you could start talking about guys that have had success. Steve Sarkisian,
Brian Kelly,
Lane Kiffin. I don't think these guys want to go to Ohio State, but I'm just talking about if you have Ohio State to offer and this type of money and NIL, then you don't have to hire an up-and-coming offensive coordinator.
It's a top 3 job in the country.
Agreed. Second down,
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay. Will we ever see a moment again in our lifetimes where NIL takes a backseat to anything else in high school recruiting? I'm not talking about transfers. I'm talking about high school football recruiting.
We already saw it, and we're going to see it again. And it's this. When you have you might see it with Kirby Smart now. I think players right now are taking what was the Saban discount. I think you're seeing the Kirby Smart discount where players are realizing, particularly on defense, Kirby Smart's going to get me to the NFL and make me a top 10 draft pick. So I'll sacrifice some NIL money for that. I bet you see it with John Calipari in basketball. John Calipari can be like, look at what I've done with guards. Look at how many lottery picks I've produced. I'm sorry. I think if you are an elite coach in terms of NIL, in terms of pro talent that you've produced, look, I think Fulmer would have gotten an NIL discount in the late 90s had it existed.
I think, from what I've been told, Josh Heupel's already gotten a discount. And I think it was obvious by Big Mac over the weekend. I don't think George McIntyre with Merklinger and Nico on the roster was promised a ton of money. I think he wanted to come to Tennessee partly because he was an in-state kid, but also partly because Tennessee has an offense that's exciting. So I think you get an offensive discount, not a go to the NFL discount, but I could see a time, Tennessee's culture, where a lot of kids, yes, they get some NIL so they don't have to go without their Taco Bell like Arian Foster lied about, but you don't have to give $8 million to a quarterback from California. That was the splash one. I think we'll be talking about much more realistic numbers in the coming years. We'll see. And if there's a cap, that's possible, but that seems really illegal to me unless there's a union. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
How many SEC schools do you believe can compete with spending $10 million to this point on incoming players? What SEC schools can compete financially, not have to compete like Georgia, but can compete? And then I want to ask you specifically about Tennessee and why I don't think they can compete with Ohio State dollars penny for penny. But that's splitting hairs. First, what SEC schools can compete with that type of cash?
I think the 2 Texas schools can, since Texas is joining the SEC. I think they'll be able to.
Agreed?
That's it. That's it. Nobody else can compete with Tennessee in NIL cash on a year-to-year basis. Nobody. Tennessee is.
So you think Tennessee and the 2 Texas schools can compete with Ohio State? That was the question.
Yes, they can compete with those 3 can compete with Ohio State. Nobody else can. Nobody else can.
I think Alabama and Georgia can. Okay, so if you look at revenue out of the top 25 schools, who do you think's number one? Now, this is not the same thing. Money coming into the university is not the same as NIL. It doesn't mean they have that all in place, but I think there's usually a similarity. Who do you think's number one in terms of revenue in the entire nation?
I would venture to guess Texas A&M, but could I be wrong on that?
A&M's 7. Ohio State's number one at 251 million. Texas is 239 million. Alabama 214 million. Michigan 210 million. Georgia 203 million. LSU 199. Texas A&M 193. Now, these numbers that I'm giving you are somewhat dated because we know Tennessee has eclipsed 200 million. They released that not long ago. So these numbers are a little bit dated because all the numbers haven't come in. But if you ask me that question, I think that Tennessee, I think the SEC teams that can compete with Ohio State and Michigan, for that matter, are Texas, the Texas schools, Texas A&M, Georgia, and Alabama. As for Tennessee,
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. 4th down.
Can the Vols compete with that sort of cash? I'll remind you, 4 Downs is brought to you by Dynasty Pools and Spas. Go to Dynasty Pools and Spas for your chemicals and visit their showroom in Athens. Mention Off the Hook Sports. Get $500 off your next spa, and they deliver to Knoxville and Chattanooga. All right. So you think Tennessee can compete with that sort of spending, correct?
Right now they can. Yes, right now. But not long term, because I will tell you this, and I thought about this as we've been talking. And I say this for the Texas schools joining the SEC. Long term, because of the bad Sankey deal with ESPN, the SEC schools just won't be able to compete with the Big Ten, period. I mean, you're going to see Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio State with that revenue they got coming in. They're going to lap the SEC in revenue spending because they have, when those TV contracts start paying out, they will be able to, donors will be able to donate so much less money that they'll be able to just open up checkbooks for talent. And I mean, to the level that I'm not going to be surprised if you see Wisconsin go down to, you'll see Wisconsin and Iowa go down to Texas and just pluck Texas talent out of the state. And by the way, you know, I talked about Louisiana kids staying in Louisiana. I think they'll pluck some Louisiana kids away out of LSU easily with the NIL money they'll have.
I don't think Tennessee can consistently compete with those type of dollars right now. And I think Tennessee has one of the best NIL initiatives out there. But we're talking a different level of dollars. If you look at all of these schools, you would expect Ohio State, since some of the numbers I gave you are a little bit dated, they'll be pushing $300 million within a couple of years, especially with the TV money. So I think that schools would be wise, Alabama, to find things that are appealing to your school that are not just NIL. And with losing Nick Saban, that becomes incredibly difficult. Tennessee, I think, has to offset that with, hey, listen, the old John Calipari thing, don't trip over nickels to get to millions. That is what they've got to say. That and Ryan Day might be on the hot seat this year or definitely next year if they don't go deep into the college football playoff. Still sounds weird saying that. Doesn't go deep into the college football playoff. But I don't think Tennessee could compete with that sort of cash long term. I think what you have to sell is, yes, Ohio State may be able to give you $1 million, but we can give you 800,000. And you can then be at this school and you can have a great corporate culture where it's very supportive and this is a better fit for you. I think there's a lot of things you can sell. I think when you're talking about those type of dollars, including the NFL, you can sell that as well. I think you have to start selling other things besides just the whatever it may be, $1 million. Now, as far as the promotion of it, I think that's stupid. I think that, frankly, it's really stupid. I think Tennessee and Spire Sports regrets letting that $8 million leak out there for Nico. I don't know why you would do that. And it just speaks to me of desperation getting back to Ohio State. You brought it up this morning. It is total desperation. It is this year or nothing for Ryan Day, I believe. And I didn't think so when I woke up this morning before I talked to you at our 3:45 a.m. production meeting. Caleb, you've been saying this for a long time, and Caleb's ahead of the curve on a lot of things. I thought Ohio State would be fine, just kind of chugging along. But, man, losing to Michigan is a big deal.
3 years in a row.
Yes, 3 years in a row. I mean, that is and I did work for a company out of Ohio, and it's a big, big deal for a lot of casual fans as well. So, Caleb, you have the NFL is split in Cleveland and Cincinnati among football fans, but they're all behind Ohio State. They're not split between that and Cincinnati. So should that concern Tennessee fans in the future that they might not be able to compete with that type of spending?
Okay, so there's two stories to get out here with Ohio State and what they're doing. Things as they are right now, and I say that pre-Big Ten TV revenue coming in. This spending by Ohio State is like the Ole Miss spending with Lane Kiffin. It wouldn't be a yearly thing that they would do, Dave. It would just be this one specific year they open up the checkbook because they want to send a message to Ryan Day, put up or shut up. So it's just this year on that. The message you just put up, Tilval Hala, OSU can't spend that much every year. That's the point I would make. Tennessee would typically be able to compete with OSU outside of this year because of what OSU is going all in on this year. Here's the curveball, though. OSU may be ahead of the curve and realizing the TV revenue that's going to come in, meaning they're going to go ahead and realize, okay, we can jump the gun and start spending a lot now because we don't need this booster money. And this is what I talked about, where it was a big mistake with that SEC deal. And I think if Tennessee, here's where Tennessee will be able to compete with Ohio State spending wise 5 years down the road if they leave the SEC and join the Big Ten. Now, everybody's heads in Knoxville would explode if that happened, okay? But I'm telling you, you are in danger as the SEC right now of falling further behind the Big Ten than the ACC is behind you right now in the SEC.
I firmly disagree with that. Caleb and I openly disagree on that. I think there are some incentives, some things in there with the SEC contract that I got a little hint on that I think and we're not going to know for 5 years who's right, Caleb, but in 5 years, we'll look back at it and say it wasn't as bad as you think. I still think the Big Ten deal is better. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's night and day difference. Now, I want to get to this for a second, not to get off topic, but Daniel says, I don't feel like we're anywhere close to the 25 million goal of the volunteer club. It's hard to believe that after 3 seasons, it has over $4,000 or 4,000 members. Hey guys, can I ask you a quick question? Are you spending money on the volunteer club? Because I believe there's going to come a day when we look back and guys said, great people that make up the state of Tennessee and make up Tennessee's fan base that are making $50,000, $60,000 are giving a couple of $100 a month to be in this volunteer club. And I'm not knocking any fundraising, but in retrospect, guys, you're talking about a very small percentage of your hard-earned cash that is going to NIL money. They're depending not on you. That's a money-making venture. And this might get me in trouble, but to send your hard-earned cash, I mean, goodness gracious, give it to Zach Turner, who I believe is still in the link down below. His wife's his wife's going through cancer. Listen, Walmart's going to spend millions. I'm just picking Walmart. Corporations are going to spend millions. Your little bit that could be a car payment is not going to make a big difference. I'm sorry. Do not spend your hard-earned money doing that. I mean, it befuddles the mind. Plus, you're giving it to some people that you're not 100% sure what percentage they're taking. And I ask around a lot. And I've been told anywhere from 10 to 90%. I'm not ripping anyone, and I don't know. But I would want a lot more transparency before I stroke a check for $400 or $500 a month, and my wife comes to me and says, what's this volunteer club thing? I want a lot more transparency. So I'm curious. I'm going to ask you guys, you're hardcore fans on the message board. So do you send money to collectives to get players? Do you think it helps? Caleb, I'm sorry, but it doesn't help.
No, it's a scam to subsidize the boosters who would spend the money anyway. It's like, by the way, it's like when you go to the store. You ever go to the store and the grocery store says, "Would you like to donate $1 to child hunger?" Guys, they're donating that dollar anyway. They just want it to come from you so they can write it off on their taxes as a charity. That's what they're doing, okay? They're going to send that money anyway to the child hunger thing of whatever they're donating. It's like, for instance, when, and we all see it when the government tells us we got to tax you more to pay for this, and then you go and it affects you, but then you go and you look and you're like, wait a minute, but Amazon didn't pay any taxes last year. Wouldn't you have made more money just making them pay their taxes rather than like taxing my hard-earned cash that actually affects me?
I would rather you wait outside the stadium with $500 in hand and hand it to Cooper Mays, and Cooper Mays has to do something for it, but he could retweet you saying, "Hey, I met Cooper Mays." And then if he retweeted it, that's considered a service, so you can pay him $500 for that. Stand outside Neyland Stadium long enough, and the players will come out and just hand them a bunch of cash. Daniel says membership starts at $5. I pay $25 a month. I'm not rich. The $25 a month is well worth you get in the tailgates in return. That's
so maybe
cool.
There's a return. If there's a return, that's fine.
That's totally cool. And if you're getting something out of it, I get that, Daniel. And I didn't mean to single you out or be in a finger.
But make sure you're getting something out of it.
Yes. So listen, if you want to pay $25 a month and you get in an exclusive club, that's fine. Go for it. But make sure you get something out of it. Daniel, I know the narrative is 10% goes to operational cost and 90% to the players. But I got to be real honest with you. I don't know that I believe that number. And I'm not calling anybody.
I have covered nonprofit charities as a local journalist, and I can tell you that way more goes to operational costs than they tell you goes to operational costs.
Yes.
Typically with charities. But long story short, in all of this,
and Travis is making fun of me. Not to interrupt you, Caleb. Travis is making fun of me. You want to stand outside the stadium and give dudes cash. Well, if you want 100% know that it's going to them, yeah, and have them.
Well, and also think about this. Now, again, Danny White's doing a fundraising goal. Now, Danny White has actually shown his interest in helping to grow UT beyond what previous athletic directors were doing. But Tennessee had a decade of dysfunction, as we've all well know. And wouldn't they have Dave, if this was like 2017, wouldn't it be a lot of nerve for them to ask for this money from fans in 2017 when they hadn't delivered? Like, wouldn't the fans have a right to say, hey, how about you actually show us that you can be semi-competent in what you're doing before we sit there and open up the checkbook for you? Because Tennessee had a massive decade of dysfunction. And honestly, this is going to hurt Alabama because they were going to try to raise from fans too, because the boosters aren't willing to give the way the boosters should give. And I keep saying this, Alabama fans, y'all need to step up and demand that the boosters cobble up money, because you're not going to get commitments just because people like Alabama. That's not going to happen.
Colton says, I'd rather give it to Dave for a great show. Now, if I can only remember to like his videos, hit the like button. Colton, hit it now. Everybody hit it now, right now, so we can bring more people in. We have an announcement coming here, maybe by the end of the week, where I don't believe in asking you for money. I know that a lot of YouTubers do that. I would rather you give it to Zach Turner, who's below. His wife's battling cancer. Or I would rather you purchase a book where you get something out of it. And I was just so, like I was preaching before, it would be hypocritical to say donate money to me. I don't want that. Give it to Zach and please buy a book. I will ask you that, because I ordered too many and I've got extra books, and I'll throw in a t-shirt for anybody that orders a book today. I I also think that Travis brings up a good point. It makes finally subscribe. Thank you. I'm always at work and lazy. All right. So Travis says it makes people feel involved. Now, I think that's cool. And as long as it's not a bunch of money, no harm, no foul. Agreed. And I've learned something. You get something back. You get to go in that volunteer club. So that's all well and good. But we do have something coming up that we're excited about where we're going to be able to give out weekly prizes. And we're going to start a bit of a club as well. But we're not going to call it a club because a club sounds goofy. It sounds like something you would do when you were 8 years old. So we're going to call it something else, but you'll have the opportunity to win great prizes. So thank you for subscribing, Colton. Finally, I've seen you on here, and man. And Derek, by the way, you're not pulling me into a political conversation. I said 25 years ago when I got in this business, you'll know what I think about sports, but you'll never know what I think about. Wow, that's good. You'll never know what I think about politics. The Hooker Club, I'm in. All right. That's what we'll do. But you're going to have an opportunity to win big time stuff. So we're working on that. The missus, the other hooker in the house, is going to put that together. But we're talking about some pretty significant prizes and frequent prizes because, by golly, if the state of Tennessee can run a lottery, why can't I, Caleb?
No, that's fair. That's a good point.